Oh, that sweet, sweet American staple. Corn sugars with tomatoes in it. I mean ketchup. But then there's the other thing you put on hot dogs, mustard. And also, what some refer to as ketchup's dark twin, mayonnaise. These condiments have some deep history to their flavor, which involves war, fallen empires, and intense rivalries. Today, let's look into ketchup's Condimystery. Intro. Ketchup is an American staple, there's no doubt about that. Reportedly, 97% of us United Americans have at least one bottle right now. I've got several. Now, the good old US of A being itself would have you believe that they invented it, but it actually originates in Southeast China and the East Indies of all places. Though, the sauce originally didn't include tomatoes at all in its original form. And sounds like the exact opposite of a good time. My poor white taste bud. One of the earliest recipes dates back to 544 AD and says to take the intestine, stomach, and bladder from a yellow fish, shark, and mullet, wash them, and put it all into a sealed jar with some salt, and leave it out in the sun for 20 days if it's summer, 50 for spring and fall, and 100 days for winter. It's like making sun tea, but with fish guts. The name ketchup comes from the Hokkien Chinese word ketchup, which literally translates to fish sauce. The British first encountered this sauce in the 16th century while exploring the Eastern Islands, and later tried to recreate it in the late 17th century or early 18th century. And one of the first things they did to the fermented anchovy sauce was to add beer. Leave it to the British to do that. A more advanced recipe, published in 1732 by Richard Bradley, called for mushrooms and walnuts and oysters and anchovies. And actually, mushroom ketchup is very similar to what we know today as Worcestershire. So, ketchup also led into Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire. Maybe I did pronounce it right the first time. A famous author from this time period, Jane Austen, notably really liked walnut ketchup, another ketchup that would play a role into the evolution of Worcestershire. But why so long until tomatoes were added? I mean, the fruit seems perfect for sauce making. Well, it turns out that it's because there was a common misconception the English had that tomatoes were toxic. And it's not like that idea came out of nowhere. Tomato plants are a part of the nightshade family, which are known for being toxic. So they had a good reason for assuming that. It wasn't until 1872 that a horticulturalist named James Meese created the first recipe for ketchup with tomatoes in it. Or, as he likes to call them, love apples. It called for tomato pulp, spices, and brandy. That's it. You gotta add that alcohol though. It helps kill all the bacteria and preserve it. And that's exactly also why it got so popular. It's just tomatoes, and spices, and brandy. Amazing. Tomato ketchup's popularity is mainly due to its natural preservation time of up to a year when made like that. And naturally, as unchecked capitalism tends to go, many business people tried to capitalize on this preservation aspect, which meant adding not so appealing things to increase the time limit on its expiration, and also adding things to make it appear more appetizing. A Dr. Harvey Washington Wiley was at the forefront of the war against preservatives and such artificial, unneeded additives, as he found that coal tar was commonly added to commercially made ketchup to help preserve it and brighten it up. But this is when the American staple of Heinz comes into play. Henry J. Heinz shared Dr. Wiley's belief that consumers didn't want freaky preservatives and weird chemicals in their food, so in 1876 they partnered and started to produce their own commercially available ketchup. Heinz switched the recipe to use red tomatoes for their color and their natural pectin, and they also drastically increased the amount of vinegar for that naturally increased shelf life. By 1905, Heinz dominated the market and had sold 5 million bottles, and recipes for the condiment started disappearing altogether from cookbooks because nothing homemade quite tasted the same. Why would you put in all that effort into making your own ketchup when the commercially available stuff is just better all around? Heinz is also famous for its historical Heinz 57 slogan, and here's what that's all about. Henry Heinz himself says that 5 is his lucky number and 7 is his wife's lucky number, and it just so happened that they had 57 varieties of products on the commercial market at the time, from pork and beans to tomato juice. Though by the time the slogan was widespread, they had expanded to over 60 different products. Over the 20th century, the food company would grow and just become a major staple of American condiments. Tomato ketchup was here to stay, and even if that meant adapting to the times, which means replacing sugar with high fructose corn syrup, but only in America, and adding more preservatives, and well, that's the history of ketchup. Next time we'll talk about another one of these.